But while I was in court, standing in the one corner of one of those big classrooms, I was standing there with a couple of other fellows, and I saw 2 or 3 girls standing up in the far corner. And I said to one of the fellows, "Who's that beautiful black-eyed girl up there?" And they said, "Well, that's Sally Merrill from Hill Spring." I didn't know where Hill Spring was. But I said to them, "You know, someday I'm going to marry that girl."
Like a bell that is ringing.
This is Leslie Hillstrom. I was asked to share with you about how my husband and I met and were married. I was at BYU and I was a senior and went home to San Diego for Christmas. One of our friends who lived by us set me up with Jeff on a blind date. They had met Jeff when he was on a mission in Arizona. He was then in San Diego in the Navy on an aircraft carrier. We went out while I was home. I was also dating someone else who was in the Navy, but was out to sea at the time. I guess Jeff won out. Jeff came to Provo a couple of times, and we got to spend more time together. He's actually from Ogden. I moved home after I graduated in April. We spent a lot of time together and got engaged. We were married in the Salt Lake Temple August 24th, 1973.
And when the evening comes, we smile, so much of life.
Well, I left. I didn't meet her then at all. And I didn't see her again until June of the next year. I was clerking in a grocery store that owned by my uncle during the summer. And I remember her so well. She came in to buy some things at the store, and I was the one who took her order. And I remember that so well. That's the first time I had met her. I didn't meet her, I just served her as a clerk. It's the only customer I remember in that whole summer that came in particularly.
I was a senior in high school in 1956 and 57. The eminent gleaners, which were now called young adults, had a special temple session in the Arizona temple. Floyd was there and he asked to take me home, but I told him no. I had a way home. Well, he thought, that's the end of that girl. 7, I attended a sacrament meeting at my sister's ward. They were blessing her new baby that day, and when I walked in the culture hall, Floyd was sitting on the front row in the chairs, and I went up and put my hand on his shoulder and said, "May I sit by you?" So I sat by him. Well, he took me home, and we went on a date that night. We took our 85-year-old neighbor lady with us to a state center dedication. On June 1st, Floyd proposed to me in my dad's plumbing shop, where I worked on Saturdays and the weekdays after school. And so we were married on September 5th, 1957, in the Mesa Temple. But he continued to court me during our lives together. He would dance with me in the moonlight and in our home and out on the driveway. And we had a heaven on earth in our lives together, for which I am very thankful. And even when we were dating, he'd call me at noon on the phone. And when he worked at home, he'd call from downstairs to me upstairs. And so he kept the courtship going. And it's very important to us to have the scripture reading together and our prayers together.
She was kind enough to say I was conscious of you. I should tell you, too, that When I said that about her, she had seen me down in the corner of this other room. She said, "Who's that homely kid down there?" Well, she was talking to an aunt of mine who was just a year older. She told her who I was, but that's the contrast. It's a tremendous thing for a man to have a wife that will support him in all things and help him do better, and to let the family know the importance of the church and the good living. She's always conscious of my comfort or discomfort, and a great strength to me, has been ever since we were married.
Bruce and I met while we were attending the University of Utah. We both lived in different stakes in Bountiful, Utah. I had an assignment in biology that required a long day at the university and missed my regular ride home to Bountiful. So I went to the library to see if I could find someone from Bountiful to get a ride home. I found a guy I knew vaguely, and he said I could ride home in his car and to meet out in front of the library at 5 o'clock. So I was there at 5 and climbed in the back seat, sitting by Bruce Smith. He called for a date a few days later, and we went to the Utah Symphony for our first date. We danced in the all-church MIA Dance Festival at the University of Utah football stadium in June of 1959. He proposed to me in Memory Lane Park in Salt Lake City, reading poetry to me, and so I was engaged in June 1959.
I love her and appreciate her and thank the Lord for her. I don't think I ever pray, but what I thank the Lord for my wife and pray that, and for the love we have for each other, pray that we may continue to carry on that way.
I feel that I have always wanted to support my husband. I made up my mind early in my marriage that I would never stand in his way in this church work in any way. I would do all I could to support him. I really feel that I always had a testimony of the gospel, but it certainly has been a great influence in raising my daughters.
Okay, I was in high school, ready to graduate from high school, age 17, and I didn't have a prom date. Doris Davis, sort of a friend, wanted me to go on a blind date. But she kept at me, and finally I said, "All right, Doris, all right." So I went. And that's how I met Robert Chester Newman, or Bob. And Bob was probably 21 at the time, and I was 17. It was right before graduation time, and I don't know why I did this, but on our date I said, "Hey Bob, you want to go to a prom?" He said, "No way." But we went dancing. We double dated with Doris and her date, and I wasn't very impressed with Bob. But one thing that impressed me, we danced just alike. So we just danced and danced all night. So we only saw each other on weekends when he could make it in. But he called me every single night. He worked till 11-something at night, so I'd get a phone call really late. So Bob and I dated, and we had a really good time. So we dated, and it was all good. And Bob waited until I turned 18. We dated 6 months, and I turned 18. And he turned in all his insurance policies from the Army. And we went downtown and bought me my rings. So we sat in my folks' hallway on the stairs, and he gives me my ring, my engagement ring. Went upstairs, and he talked to my dad, and my dad's famous words, I had to laugh, were, "Well, I figured if you were hanging around this long, something like this would happen." So Bob and I married 6 months later. We were married June 5th, 1948. In his church, where his parents, it was Stewart Ridge Community Church.
Give your heart and soul to me, and life will always be la vie en rose.
That other part of his dream, in the person of Emma Ray Riggs, was still awaiting fulfillment.
There is nothing in the world that can separate two hearts that are bound by the golden clasp of love.
So wrote David O. McKay. In Leicester Park in Ogden, he proposed to her and she accepted. They were the first couple in the year 1901 to be wed in the Mormon temple at Salt Lake City. There is no death do us part clause in a Latter-day Saint temple wedding ceremony. It is a union which links a couple forever. When Emma Ray and David O. McKay came down these steps, they were man and wife for time and all the eternities to come.
Well, we were both at BYU. I was a senior, and he was on the faculty. And because I was playing for the ward choir and he was looking for an accompanist, he came to our choir practice one morning. And he was a singer, an entertainer, always looking for people to play the piano for him. And so after choir practice, he came down to the piano and asked me if I would be willing to accompany him to sing. And I said, well, sure. What else do you do when you play the piano? And so we wanted to practice and practice and practice. And he kept wanting to practice. I kept thinking, what am I not doing right here? Because he wanted to practice so much. Well, nobody had even asked him to sing yet. So pretty soon, after quite a few practices, he asked someone if he could sing at their ward. And they said, sure. And he was in the counseling center, and so the man who was the bishop up there was also a counselor in the counseling center. So that was our first date. Well, he was a little older, about 8 years older than I, and I was waiting for missionary and dating lots and lots of boys, having a really great time. I was very involved in Program Bureau and just lots of, I was Relief Society president. I was just having a great time. My senior year, student teaching, all the stuff. And so we had kind of a hard time getting together and erasing all the other people out of my life. And so one night I said, I just need to have a brick or something hit me on the head and say, this is it, this is it. So one night I got home from a date or some rehearsal or something, and here's a brick all wrapped in aluminum foil with a sign on it that says, use as needed. And so that was kind of when we decided we better at least check this out and see if we were well suited. And yes, we were. So we were engaged in March and married the following June. And I had a baby when my missionary got home. But it was made in heaven, and we had a great time.
No other success can compensate for failure in the home. The poorest shack in which love prevails over a united family is of far greater value to God and future humanity than any other rich. In such a home, God can work miracles and will work miracles.
And when I was about 14 or 15, a group of my friends and I would ride bicycles from Spring City up to Mount Pleasant, and there we would gather with a group of girls. There were 9 of them. Bonnie was one of those girls, and that's where I first met her. And then over the years, obviously became much more acquainted. We both went to North San Pete High School and started to date when we were sophomores. We were both 16 years old. And so we dated all during our high school experience, and obviously took in a variety of school activities that we attended together. After we graduated from high school, Bonnie went to work in Salt Lake, and I went to attend school at Snow College. I drove back and forth from Spring City, but she came home on weekends. And for those couple of years that I was at Snow College, we went to dances almost every weekend with a group of friends over to Moroni, both during the summer and during the winter. I graduated from Snow College at the time the Korean War was going on. I had anticipated going on a mission, but they froze the mission calls because of the war, and so they were not sending out any missionaries. And so on one of my trips home from the service, Bonnie and I were married. We were married in the Manti Temple, and that was, of course, a highlight of our lives up to that point.
And you make me happy the rest of my days. Put your arms around.
Most duty as a bearer of the priesthood is to love and care for your wife. Become one with her. Be her partner. Make it easy for her to want to be yours. No other interest in life should take priority over building an eternal relationship with her. Nothing on TV, a mobile device, or a computer is more important than her well-being. Take an inventory of how you spend your time and where you devote your energy. That will tell you where your heart is. Pray to have your heart attuned to your wife's heart. Seek to bring her joy. Seek her counsel. And listen. Her input will improve your output.
And my Sunday school teacher had me write on the blackboard and get acquainted with me, which that is the side story that I didn't know about till later, but he was trying to get better acquainted with me, which happened to be Joseph. And he was 25, and his parents, I think, were a little concerned that he needed to be getting married. So he used to tell me that his dad used to ask him at family home evenings, have him set a goal of how many dates he. So after we had been dating for a while, his dad called him one day and told him, yes, this was during the draft of the Vietnam War, long time ago. And he was about to be drafted because he was still single and was teaching seminary in Bountiful. They were discussing that, but then his dad said to his dad, but Dad, you don't know the half of it. And his dad got all excited and he said, there's a girl involved. And he said, yes. And his dad, just without breathing, said, marry her. And he said, but Dad, I've only known her, I think it was a week and a half. And his dad said, well, Joseph, do you remember the story of Rachel and Jacob? He met her, and he fell in love with her and took her into the tent and married her. And Joseph said, yeah. He said, well, surely you're as smart as Jacob. So that gave him the courage to pursue our relationship. Not really, but that was just a little side story. And we continued dating, and we were engaged 6 weeks after we met and married 12 weeks after we met. He is still the love of my life and the beginning of, well, it's been 56 years now.
Let me share with you a personal experience I had as a teenager while our family was attending church in Frankfurt, Germany. One Sunday, the missionaries brought a new family to our meetings who I hadn't seen before. It was a mother with 2 beautiful daughters. I thought that these missionaries were doing a very, very good job. I particularly took notice of the one daughter with gorgeous dark hair and large brown eyes. Well, her name was Harriet, and I think I fell in love with her from the first moment I saw her.
He came out to get a ride home. So they introduced us. He sat in the back, I was in the front, and I really didn't pay that much attention, because we were deep in conversation. So they dropped me off, and then when they went to drop him off, they said, okay, we're not letting you out of the car until you agree to take her on a date, because they kind of figured we belonged together. And so he agreed. And then when he called me, I didn't recognize his name, and I really thought it was this other guy giving me a funny name. And I said, sure, come on over. And then he showed up at the door, and I thought, oh my gosh. And he said, well, I thought you were kind of anxious. It was not even really knowing me. Well, I didn't think it was him. Anyway, so we started dating, and then I guess the thing that finally impressed me about him was his depth. And he had goals, and he worked hard for his goals. And I guess the thing was I didn't get bored with him. We could talk and talk and talk and never run out of things to say. And I guess that, and he had interesting conversation, not just, superficial. So I think that really attracted me to him, and I knew he was really serious about the church. I went to his missionary reunion with him, and his mission mother pulled me aside and asked me how serious we were. And I said, well, we haven't really been dating that long. She says, you better nag on to him, because he was the only missionary in our mission that my husband wasn't embarrassed to go tracting with. So I thought that was kind of interesting. And then, there were several other people that really thought we belonged together. So anyway, we dated, and we met in February, we were engaged in May, and married in August. And then we went to vet school.
The man